Good morning. The November 2nd Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin, I just want to mention that Dr. Frank let me know that he is on travel today, and I have not heard from Mr. Grana, but I understand he won't be with us either. Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. Item 2.04 is established agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Item 2.05 are recognitions, and we don't have any this morning. Item 2.06 is Educator of the Month, Mrs. Nally.
Good morning. Parents and the general public often wonder, just what is it that school counselors do on a daily basis? Gone are the days of counselors simply handing out college applications and making schedule changes for students. Today's school counselors are vital members of the educational team. They help all students in the areas of academic achievement. Okay. And personal and social development and practicing strategies for success in school. One such outstanding school counselor is our Educator of the Month, Kim Perillo, who shares the wealth of her background and knowledge at Belvedere Elementary School. Mrs. Perillo has embraced our county's initiative to teach children to develop a growth mindset by teaching students lessons about their brains and how hard work helps them grow smarter. Through her growth mindset guidance lessons, the Belvedere students are learning perseverance and grit. She teaches students about the brain, encourages them to seek out challenges, and helps them to view setbacks as a normal part of the learning process. Mrs. Perillo promotes positive changes in the growth of her students. She runs counseling groups based on identified needs such as anxiety and grief due to personal issues at home. She has a masterful way of speaking to and with children. She is extremely effective at counseling both students and families in crisis, and she excels at dealing with students with challenging behaviors. As the school's 504 facilitator, a job she shares with the assistant principal, she does an excellent job of explaining the Section 504 process to parents. Mrs. Perillo is extremely kind and empathetic when dealing with concerned parents, which is a large component of the school counselor's role. She is calm and steady in the face of difficult situations. Because of her ability to deal with challenging situations, the administration has designated her a teacher in charge when both administrators are out of the building. Kim Perillo also oversees the televised morning school news, selecting students, training them, and teaching them the character trait of the month, which the news crew communicates to the student body each day. In addition, she organizes a comprehensive career day every spring, reaching out to families and community members to maximize learning opportunities for students. Kim Perillo, you play a vital role in the educational process for the students at Belvedere Elementary School. You provide proactive leadership that engages all stakeholders in the delivery of programs and services to help students achieve school success. So for these reasons and more, the board is honored to recognize you Educator of the Month for November 2016. Congratulations. Please join me. Thank you so much. And I really thank you. And provide you with this certificate and this bell. Now you can ring.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, tell me first, what lie did they tell to get you here?
That I was helping with the counselors, third-year counselors meeting.
Oh.
Upstairs.
Oh.
Totally caught me off guard. So good job, guys.
Well, and who's with you? I saw
Oh my gosh. I have my wonderful admin, past and present. So I have Tammy Perunovich, assistant principal. I think she has something to do with this. I have a feeling. And Kay Panagopoulos, my former principal. My current, Tara Lambden, my husband, Jason Perillo, my mother-in-law, Joyce Perillo. So thank you guys. You guys are sneaky. I'm impressed. Well, I hope that I live up to this wonderful honor. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you to my awesome school counseling team. They're the best. I'll be up here with me for sure.
Well, we'll be taking pictures out after in a little bit when we have a break, so make sure they all get out to get a picture with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Item 2.07 is Employee of the Month, Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, we honor an employee in our school system who for nearly 40 years has dedicated himself to AACPS schools and students. He has been the model employee and gentleman at all times throughout these years, and he has left his mark on the hearts of students, parents, educators, and communities, especially at Botkin Elementary. He is retiring. He is retiring soon, but instead of going into the specifics of why everyone is so impressed with Alvin Talley, otherwise known as Mr. Al, take a look at this.
Not just watching anyone, we'd be lucky to have him because of his friendliness and helpful. He always gets the job done. Mr. Al is our role model because he's awesome and he always has a smile on his face. You're the man, Mr. Al!
So awesome because he always hugs me every day and says how was your day.
He does the hip hip hooray when you're the good citizen because it like gives you a little hint that like he is like really excited for you. Hip hip hooray!
Telling you I'm really mad at you for leaving, but I'm actually very excited for you. There's nobody better than you.
He's the main one who takes care of the school.
Hey, Mr. Al, we miss you. We want to thank you for everything you've done these past years, and we hope you have a great life. Woo! Hooray!
What can we say about Al? Al has been the best. Great. We've worked with him almost 20 years now.
Role model, good role model.
Good role model. Wonderful.
Friend.
Always smiling. Best friend.
Thanks, Mr. Al. Thank you for the stamps. From Chesapeake Cheerleading to you, Mr. Al, we thank you for making our days better. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Mr. Al, you have been described as legendary, and on behalf of the Board of Education and the entire AACPS family, thank you for your extreme professional depth of character and the impact you have had on generations of students in the Pasadena community. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
So you looked a little surprised. So what did they tell you?
I don't know. It wasn't this. That's what
So you tell us who's here with you from Boston.
Oh, as my principal, Ms. Ann Stutz. My former principal, Ms. Jean Marie Hofstetter. Mr. Rocco Ferretti, he was my first principal. Operations manager, Chris. Former teacher at Botkin, Mike Sheener. Co-worker Karen Boyer. Oh, our nurse, Miss Sue. And the head woman in the office, Patrice. And Missy Gilroy, I think. Yeah, Missy. And our guidance counselor, Miss Jennifer Elsis. I think, did I miss anybody? I think that's it.
And thousands of other people you've had an impact on along the way. So we've got for you a bell.
Thank you.
A certificate for you that's in here. And then also a copy of the video that you just saw.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Item 2.08 is Volunteer of the Month. Ms. Sasso.
Audrey Hepburn once said, "As you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself, the other for helping others." Many of our Anne Arundel County School volunteers are retired citizens who know and live the adage by dedicating themselves to our students. Today, the Board of Education is proud to honor one such exceptional volunteer, Mr. Lenny Burton, as November's Volunteer of the Month. Lenny Burton loves the students of Tyler Heights Elementary, and they love their Mr. Lenny. Almost every school day, Lenny brings his lifetime of knowledge, skills, interest, and cheerful encouragement to serve the Tyler Heights students and their families. The Tyler Heights yearbook is full of Lenny's photos that capture precious moments for the entire school community. He works closely with the yearbook staff to gather, download, and edit hundreds of photos. With his camera always nearby, Lenny always assists throughout the school day, both in classrooms and beyond. He works one-on-one with students to strengthen their reading and reading comprehension skills, and mentors individuals who need extra attention, guidance, and encouragement. Lenny heads Tyler Heights' successful Backpack Buddy program in loving memory of his friend Brenda Schooner legacy of service. He and his team of commitment volunteers ensure that more than 70 children take home nourishing snacks each weekend. Each week, he and his team of dedicated volunteers provide backpacks full of nourishing snacks to help other 70 families in need. In addition, the Backpack Buddies provide them with coats in the fall, handsome toys for the holidays, and warm winter blankets. Principal Julia Walsh writes, "He provides consistency that our families need and has developed positive and long-lasting relationships with our staff and students. Our school is a better place because of Mr. Burton's exemplary commitment to volunteer." According to Kathy Metzger, the school's former volunteer coordinator, Lenny has an amazing heart for our Tyler Heights students. "I am grateful to know him and witness his selfless service to our school. If I could clone him, I would. We need more volunteers like Lenny." Classroom teacher Lindsay James sums it up. Mr. Burton helps struggling students, goes on field trips, joins in special ed celebrations, and always smiles. He is determined to make all students feel safe, loved, and nourished. Our students are so fortunate to have such a wonderful role model. Mr. Lenny Burton, would you please come forward? With great appreciation, I want to present this Volunteer of the Month certificate and the bell to you.
Okay, what lie did they tell you?
That we were going to come up here and educate you about the goodness that Backpack Buddy does.
Okay, we would like to present you with this certificate and the bell so that you can ring it as soon as you are arriving to volunteer. And thank you very, very much for your son. Who else is here with you today?
The love of my life, my wife Ellen, the lying former pastor who got me here, and who's Anna, my sister Jean, trying to see Beth, Corinne, Kimmy's here somewhere, but honestly, all of them are equally deserving of this award. There are about 100 of us that work on this project, and every one of them is devoted to his children, and every one of them deserves it.
Thank you very, very much for your service. Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll be taking some pictures of our honorees at the break shortly. Item 2.09 is school and community highlights. Mrs. Hummer.
Last week, I attended the STEM Awards program at Studio 39, where the top 2 STEM students from each of our high schools was recognized. A very impressive group of young people with career aspirations from everything from doctors to forensic scientists. It was really incredible. And one of the most moving parts of it was each of these students picked a teacher who'd had a great impact on them, a teacher fellow, and they read a statement about those teachers. And they were wonderful, and it showed the range. Many of these are top high-level math and science students, but teachers that they pointed out included an art teacher, the cosmetology teacher, different people. That shows the impact across the range for these students. So it was really a special night. I know many of us had these going on this week, but I attended the Vocabulary Hat Parade on Halloween at Monarch Global, and it's fascinating to see their creativity of the students for the different things they had, and a lot of fun, and to see the different hats. And then playoff season is upon us. I went last night to the Meade North County soccer playoff game. Go Mustangs, they won 4-0, and they will meet Severna Park this weekend. But a lot of our teams are in the playoffs this week, so it's going to be an exciting few weeks coming up for all of our fall sports. And one other thing, I bet y'all didn't know that this month is the 100th anniversary of school boards in Maryland. 100 years ago this year, school boards were founded, so it's our anniversary. There you go.
Ms. Sasso.
Yes, at the same time that there was the STEM presentation that night, we had to divide ourselves and decide which one we were going to go to, and there was the CRAS one. And the CRAS one was really an outstanding community project in which our school children basically decided to bring forth the different politicians, the different leaders of the community to discuss issues that were pertinent to the schools. And it really, really was an outstanding program. Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to extend thanks, a special thank you to Jody Reese. I had the pleasure of joining her last week, along with Dr. Arlotto at Hilltop Elementary School. They fed me lunch. I was able to eat with the students. Had a great bacon cheeseburger. They tricked me into eating turkey bacon for the first time in my life, but it wasn't too bad. But Dr. Arlotto had the same thing. He was behind me in line. He said, "Give me that too." So it was good. But it was great to see the food services program in action, up close and personal. And I've got to really give kudos to Karen Williams, the cafeteria manager at Hilltop Elementary, who just runs a great show. And then certainly kudos to Jody and her team here. And then afterwards, Dr. Arlotto and I had a chance to visit a few classrooms, and with Louise DeJesu and Mohammed in the second grade. I walked into the class, he hugged me and took me around to every corner of his classroom to show me all of the great things that they are doing in second grade reading. And the student would not let me leave the classroom, and he was just so excited about the learning that was happening there. And again, just kudos to Hilltop Elementary, Jody, Karen, Louise, and certainly thank you, Dr. Arlotto, for welcoming me there.
Ms. Williams.
I was also at the CRAS legislative dinner, and I just wanted to say that we had 4 phenomenal speakers. They gave great speeches, great presentations. I would like to say that Jacob Baumgart, the first vice president who put this whole event together, did a phenomenal job for the first year. CBF, who allowed us to use their venue. It was an amazing event, and I can't wait to see what they do in the future.
I also had the chance to go to the CRAS dinner, and I echo what everybody said. It was a fantastic evening called Youth Vision and Voice, and we have some amazing voices out there with our students. And then Dr. Orlato and I got a chance to tour the Monarch Academy in Glen Burnie. That was my first visit there to that particular Monarch, and it was just a fantastic facility, especially for those kinesthetic learners out there. A perfect environment for them. So thank you. Item 2.10 is our CAC report.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Purnell. I'm the Vice Chair for CAC, and I have a quick report for you. We have met twice so far this year, and we've had speakers from, we had the Policy Committee come and speak to us on the transition from the valedictorian, salutatorian system to cum laude. And we also had Don Counts, from the coordinator from Advanced Learning, come and present to us on the changes in the gifted and talented identification process and gifted and talented program. We have formed our subcommittees. We will continue with communication, equity and testing, looking at those things. We've also branched out, adding technology, bus transportation, and kind of a big lump one of counseling, mental health, substance abuse, life skills prep, looking into some of those things. And finally, we would like to ask the board to be involved and informed of the budget as early as possible this year, so we can get the word out and encourage our communities to be involved in the budget hearing process this winter. So that's about all, unless you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.11 is the PTA report. No PTA report today. So then it's time for a break for pictures, and we'll be back shortly for the action items. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's time for the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 5 completed cards: Bruce Bell, Marco Bennett, Deborah Wood, Lisa Van Buskirk, and Don Patterson.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Bell, and I'd like to discuss the Board of Education's proposed redistricting, particularly as it affects the Annapolis High School and South River High School clusters. I'm concerned about its impact on the families and children of the Route 2 corridor where I live, but I'm also just trying to better understand the board's long-term plan and effect on the entire county. I understand and respect your obligation to provide our children with the best education by the most efficient, effective utilization of our resources. And I thank you for the hard work you guys put forth every day to ensure that. The Route 2 corridor community is active and engaged. We want to help provide a solution, one that is rational, objective, and data-driven, one that is fair and considerate of all the constituents involved, so long as we too are treated fairly. Though we disagreed with the Board of Education's recent vote to not rebuild Edgewater Elementary School, we continue to dedicate ourselves to the future of our children, to the community, and in fact to the whole county, much as you do every day. As we understand, the Annapolis Peninsula is being considered for redistricting in April 2017. We received Dr. Alato's letter dated October 11, 2016, and as I hope you understand, it was concerning, especially in light of the Edgewater decision, the elementary school decision. In effect, the letter implies potentially switching our children from feeding into the South River High School cluster and its associated schools to the Annapolis High School cluster and its associated schools. Logically speaking, we just don't think this makes sense. There are 4 major concerns with potentially redistricting the Route 2 corridor away from the South River High School cluster. First, a comprehensive review of the county's current and projected student enrollments and school capacities for all schools, according to the 2016 Educational Facilities Master Plan, clearly illustrates room for growth within the South River High School cluster. Second, current bus routes favor keeping the student population within the South River High School cluster, while increased congestion, traffic patterns, and road safety do not favor redistricting the students into the Annapolis High School cluster. Third, the families and children of the Route 2 corridor neighborhoods are very active and long-term members of the Edgewater community. And lastly, we want to ensure the education is the #1 priority, not redistricting for redistricting's sake. We look forward to addressing this in detail with the Board of Education. In closing, I'd appreciate just, I guess, getting a status of where the proposed process is at this point.
Do we have the committee formed yet? I'm not sure.
No, the committees have not yet been formed, but that's forthcoming. That's the reason the letter went out.
So we're just collecting interested party or names?
Correct. So we'll be working with each of the schools, including the 3 schools in the South River cluster that are part of that peninsula that we'll be bringing into the committees.
Thank you. And what is the timeline for the process, and what benchmarks are to be completed, and by when?
The recommendation is supposed to come back to the board in February, correct?
The decision will be made in April by the board.
So a recommendation will come to us. We will decide which ones to take to public hearing in March, and then we would vote in April.
So it's still the timeline as published earlier. That hasn't changed.
Correct.
Okay. And why is the Route 2 corridor being considered for redistricting when the current and future capacities of the South River High School cluster continue to support our enrollment there.
We're looking at the 795 empty seats in Annapolis, and the fact that the Edgewater Elementary School is about 133 students over capacity right now, and we're looking geographically at the Annapolis Peninsula, so those neighborhoods happen to be on the Annapolis Peninsula, so that's why they were included.
And one final question: how does that factor in the development and growth in the Annapolis cluster itself?
We haven't looked at the data. That's what the committee is responsible to do, and bring back the recommendations here, to the superintendent first and then to us in February.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
I'm Mariko Bennett next. Not here. Okay. Deborah Wood.
Good morning. My name is Mariko Bennett, and I am here representing the local NAACP. I'm here as a parent, and I'm also representing the National Coalition of the 100 Black Women. So, we should not criminalize our children for childlike behavior. A suspension should not lead to a sentence. We are requesting that the board review every school where an SRO is present to determine if there are disparities in the policy or administrative practice in regards to the enforcement of filing charges against students. In particular, we would like you to compare this by race and overall between the following schools: Severna Park and Brooklyn Park, Broadneck and Annapolis, Arundel and South River. We also reviewed the policy with regards to the role of the SRO, and it states that these officers should practice a restorative justice approach to resolving issues. We ask that you provide us with a report on best restorative justice practices currently in place. We would also like the board to clarify if it is the policy or a practice in which an SRO files charges in every case that involves a low-level fight. Is it a policy or is this a practice? And is this standard in every school in the county? If this is the policy, then we stand ready to work with you to ensure that the effects of this policy are understood by the board and the operational results are clear. Our child's situation has forced us to reach out to other families in this community. What we found is that we are not alone, and the community desperately wants to ensure that the minority community is not being overly criminalized. We want to ensure that all policies and practices are being enforced equally within all schools, regardless of race. We feel that overcriminalization of children is unacceptable. And as tax-paying citizens in this community, we will not and cannot stand for this. We know all too well that this county has a proven history of discriminatory practices, unfortunately. As an office to ensure that our children in our county are treated fairly, an office to ensure that our children in our county were treated fairly was created as a direct result of past discrimination. Unfortunately, this office was dismantled less than 3 years ago. It was established after the NAACP and other members of the community brought a civil rights lawsuit against Anne Arundel County Public Schools and won. We owe it to our children to ensure that they are not being discriminated against in their own school system. Arresting children for being children negatively alters and impacts their life forever. Given the nature and urgency of this matter, we ask the board to move forward with an immediate investigation and provide us with a transparent report of your findings. We look forward to working together to ensure that all of our children's futures are bright. Thank you.
Deborah.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Wood. I'm a child advocate and resident of this county for 34 years. The incredibly early start times for public high school students in this county entered my awareness when I couldn't get a teenage babysitter on a weeknight for my young children. Now these children are grown with children of their own. In these 3 decades, I've learned a lot about the needs of children in our community and the national concern based on sleep science for high school students to get more sleep. Thank you, thank you, thank you for moving ahead with the 13-minute slide for next year. But please let us work together to forge a plan to bring our high school start times in line with the recommended 8:30 a.m. or later start time that will allow adolescents to complete all the necessary phases of sleep to help their brains clear out the toxins from a day of thinking and process and store the experiences and information and emotions of the prior day. Accommodations for sports, jobs, childcare for younger children, and transportation need to be worked out for this to happen. Will it take another decade? I have a grandson who's a kindergartner at Folger McKenzie Elementary. 10 years from now, he'll be a 10th grader. If we start now, it needn't take that long. Change is always hard. There will be resistance, sacrifices, and hard compromises, but it must be done. Just as the Band-Aid stuck to a skinned knee that's trying to grow new skin must be removed, change must come. The Band-Aid analogy tells us that a quick rip, 8:30 a.m. by the fall of 2018, will have severe short-term repercussions, a lot of protest, and pain. A slow, gentle removal with each adjustment anticipated and planned for might take some time. 2 years? 3 years? 5 years? Please, not 10.
Good morning, Board of Education. Lisa Van Busker. We'll start school later. I've just come from Meade High School where I was speaking with the Students Against Destructive Decisions during their advisory period. And I was talking to them in advance of next week's Drowsy Driver Awareness Week and last month's Teen Safe Driving Week. They were all nodded their heads in agreement when we discussed that they're among the 80% of Anne Arundel students who don't get the required 8 hours of sleep. One student mentioned she only got an hour last night. The counselor told the story of a friend's daughter at South River STEM program who fell asleep and totaled her car while driving to school, and now she gets up even earlier so she can take the bus. So I was discussing drowsy driving with them, and statistically, over half of Anne Arundel students have driven drowsy, which has been described as the same as drunk driving, but without the fun. Delaying start times, as you know, will help our students over the next few years achieve a little bit more sleep. And we may not achieve the 60 to 75% reduction in teen car accidents like Minnesota and Wyoming jurisdictions, but perhaps the 25% achieved in Kentucky, or the 27 to 41% difference between adjacent counties of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach with their early and late start times. Start School Later looks forward to better understanding the time frame of implementation for the healthier and safer school hours over the next 2, 3, or 5 years. And I leave you with a quote. We should always be driven to do what is best for the child and not what is convenient for society. And ultimately, there's no money that will take back the life of a child who has died in a sleepy driver-related accident, a known consequence of early start times. That's from Dr. Maida Chen from Seattle Children's Hospital. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Don Patterson, and now retired after teaching 30 years in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I originally shared these remarks at a hearing held by the Anne Arundel County members of the House of Delegates in September regarding how members of the school board should be selected, and believe that they are relevant here as well. I have never been a fan for elected school board because it only seems to politicize a body that should be focused 100% on the education of students and what is best for all students. The focus on students seems too often to get pushed aside when adults get preoccupied with running for a political office or dealing with an adult issues. A recent example is a hubbub over guidelines for inclusion of transgender students. How many people find it uncomfortable, and difficult to talk openly about this issue? I do, and I suspect many adults and students do also. For students, this whole topic may be confusing, and they are looking at their teachers and parents for direction. What messages are we adults sending? The language used by adults when discussing this challenging issue is revealing. Superintendent George Orlando noted that federal, state, and local laws forbid discrimination related to gender identity and gender expression, and he stressed that Anne Arundel County's guidelines are consistent with the system's goal to eliminate the achievement gap and elevate all its students. All means all, he said. One delegate from my district, 33, said the school's policy was wrong because it may cause some non-gender students to feel uncomfortable. The county executive's objections to the policy also focused on the possible uncomfortableness felt by non-transgender or cisgender students. The county council then weighed in on this issue and passed a resolution opposing the school's policy and citing how the policy, quote, would disadvantage students who are not transgender, unquote. While another council member complained how the guidelines ignore the will of the masses and the majority should rule. Wow. Doesn't this sound like the same arguments we heard in the past regarding civil rights, Jim Crow, gay rights, and same-sex marriage? Basic human rights in America are not subject to the whim of the majority group. They are a part of what it means to be a person, to be an American. I was heartened to read the powerful comments from Scott Howarth, president of the CRAS, the Association of Student Councils, that in regard to uncomfortableness, he said the focus of opponents is misplaced, stating that, quote, growth is painful, but not as painful as being a child with incongruent anatomy, and certainly not as painful as being victimized because an adult who you trusted told the parents of your whole class how you are secretly different so they can avoid you, unquote. I believe today's youth in general are more accepting and supportive of differences among their peers. Continued education regarding gender identity and what it means to be transgender would greatly help non-transgender or cisgender students reduce any uncomfortableness they may currently feel. I applaud the superintendent and CRAS for their leadership in addressing this issue and ask the school system and the Board of Education to continue working for acceptance and success for all our students. Thank you for listening.
Good morning. Janet Norman, Annapolis High and Annapolis Middle parent. I appreciate you being here to take our input. And I know it's been a difficult and uncomfortable session receiving a barrage of emails on various issues. I know it's a very tough job that you do, and we appreciate you listening and providing, taking the input of parents who are so vested in this system. I want to show you a picture from my son's bus stop this morning. This is it. It's actually construction paper because I couldn't afford to use all the printer ink to show you what the real picture I took on my camera of how incredibly dark it is. That's not safe. That's not safe for he and his other students to be walking to bus stops, to be standing by the side of the road. It's not safe for him to be driving. He's driving at 16 down Forest Drive and Riva Road, two of the most dangerous roads in this county. You don't want him on the roads at that hour, especially completely sleep deprived. So I'm asking what has been accomplished in the past 2 months regarding the implementation of a long-term plan to move to safe and healthy hours. We'd like a report back. A lot of times parents lash out at the board because we feel that we're not getting any information. And it's a frustration speaking rather than, true opposition. It's more of, we don't know what's going on. Please fill us in. Please fill us in on how you have achieved progress in the last 2 months toward using the software, coming up with a plan that could move us to healthy start times by 2018, because the current situation does great harm. I was heartened to hear the Dr. Arlado's Be Nice campaign. I think civility and teaching our students how to interact with each other is extremely important. One of the elements that would help them achieve that is proper sleep. A number of studies have shown that students are more irritable when they don't have enough sleep. And many of you who are parents have have experienced this as sleep-deprived parents. You're just more likely to snap. Your emotions are not as in control, and you can't contain the frustrations that you're experiencing. So if we really want our students to be civil, to be interacting in a positive way, we need to give them the sleep that they need to do that. I noticed that Mr. Moser provided me some information that I asked for regarding the number of absences after the brawls at Annapolis High. And over 25% of the school was absent the next day. So if we can reduce hostilities among our students, it impacts a great number of students that missed out learning on that day and other days where they were afraid that something bad was going to happen. Thank you very much.
I don't have any other cards. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before the board at this time? Okay, we'll move on to action items. Item 4.01 is administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. Item 4.02, personnel. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. Item 4.03 is an information to action item, the 2017-18 school year calendar. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the 2017-2018 school year calendar.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a staff presentation. Okay.
Good morning. First of all, I'd really like to thank the calendar committee. As you know, it's made up of all of our negotiating units, parents, students, community members, and all of them took their responsibility very seriously. They came prepared. They had lots of input and lots of suggestions. So I just really want to thank them because they really did a great job this year. The calendar committee has worked very hard on the calendar you have before you. We feel very strongly that the calendar is an instructional instrument. We have a minimum of 180 days that we must arrange in a way that we can maximize instruction for our students to help them achieve at their highest possible level. This year, given the governor's 2 executive orders, we had many challenges. While we do not feel the decision should be taken away from LEAs on how to arrange the days to meet the needs of both students and the community, we feel strongly that we should abide by the law and not try to build a calendar that relies on waivers to make it work. The one very strong message we have heard from parents, teachers, and students is that they want you to approve a calendar that they can plan accordingly for their next school year. With so much in the news and so much flux, that's something that they really feel strongly about, and they wanted me to share that with you. We do have consensus from the calendar committee on the calendar before you. This calendar starts the day after Labor Day, ends on June 15th, and includes all the closings that are mandated by federal and state law, as well as negotiated agreements. To create a calendar that does all of those things, we had to shorten spring break to 3 days and only build in 3 inclement weather days. While these were not things we really wanted to do, it was necessary to give us a calendar that follows all the laws and the executive orders. We are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for shepherding this through the process. I've got a couple of questions that have come through email most recently from a couple of constituents, and my apologies to you for not sharing them in advance, just for prep reasons. So One is around the start of fall sports. It seems that that date has not shifted, and just for the record, for the public at large to be aware of how that works, can anyone explain how that date is determined and what some of that interaction is with the agencies that deal with sports and some of the inter-county aspects that fall into that?
Well, those dates are given to us, and our athletic department, headed by Mr. Culp, has specific dates through the state that we have to start. It goes around getting athletes enough time to be conditioned before we have the first game and things like that. This year, the start date was August 9th, but one of the principals on the committee brought up to Mr. Culp that he really would like us to move that, since we were starting later, to at least no sooner than the 12th, which would give athletes, coaches, athletic directors, people another week of vacation, summer vacation. So Mr. Culp took that back to all of the ADs in the county and had a meeting with them, and they all were in agreement that they thought that was a good idea to do that. So that's why we're starting on August 12th. I've had some input also from youth groups about this too, so we're hoping they're going to follow suit and start a little later to make sure their athletes have a little longer too for that vacation.
So, Ms. Gillen, if I could add, you ask a great question. It's good for all to understand. So we are, the start and stop times, along with all the regulations with regard to athletics in high schools across Maryland, are run by MPSSAA. So that's the Maryland Association of Athletics. And they determine the start and stop times. And it has to do with one, in the fall, a lot of it has to do with when they want to try and get the championship football game done by the first week of December. They then back map through the calendar and tell the local school systems when they can begin when they can begin practice. On the front end, because of heat acclimatization, there's a certain amount of time that students have to start to participate in fall sports without pads. I'm using football as an example, but the other sports are included because of the heat in August, and they have to have a certain number of days without pads, and then they can go to helmets, and they go to helmets and shoulder pads, and then full pads, and then full contact. And so those are some of the things that regulate when the start and stop times of the athletic program. So that's dictated to us by the state agency. And that's across all school systems. So all school systems in the state of Maryland are starting during that same week. And so I think this year it was August 9th was the start date.
It can't be before then. We can adjust it afterwards, but we can't go
start before that.
Thank you. And I know a few of us received that email. I believe it was yesterday, and so I appreciate that clarification. One other question that I'll ask. It's a broader question that I think many of us, certainly in this room today, know, but I think just for the general public, as emails have come in asking, in essence, what determines what's the gauge that the school system uses, and the calendar committee certainly, more specifically, uses to determine a half a day or an early dismissal versus a full day when we're talking about conferences or professional development opportunities, et cetera?
When we have, and it's not a half day, we have 2-hour early dismissals. 2-hour early dismissals give us a full day of school. So that's very important, because we not only have that minimum of 180 days, which we go 181 in Anne Arundel County, but 180 days, but we also have seat hours. And those seat hours are completely separate from the days. So we have to watch all of that and count that. So we're counting all of that. We have extra seat hours built into the calendar. So when we take those 2-hour early dismissals, we're always looking at what's going to give us the most bang for our buck. So some of it is literally teacher work time at the end of each assessment. So each quarter, when we have quarterly assessments, there are 2 days that are 2-hour early dismissals to give teachers the time to grade those assessments. And then others are for professional development, and we try to lump it with the teacher's longest day, so usually they actually get 3 hours in that day that they can provide professional development. So we're looking at just how we can utilize our time to best provide our teachers with professional development, but still protect the seat hours and not have to add additional days to the calendar.
Mrs. Birch?
I have a question about Christmas break. At one point, I thought that there, in some of the information that came out, that we had shortened Christmas break by 1 day from what was originally proposed in this calendar. Can you tell me where that came from?
Originally, we were going to not open until January 3rd, and that's because of the AFSCME negotiated agreement and when their holidays fall. So we were required by that particular agreement to be closed on the Tuesday, January 2nd. But we have worked with that group, and they are fine with having their days just within the other break and not specific to the language of, so that language will probably be modified.
Well, thank you so much to them for being helpful to us.
They were very, very responsive.
That's wonderful. Because I know that has been a difficult thing in the past, so that's great. That's wonderful, because I know that that has always been an issue. Great.
And specifically this year, it was very important.
Right, because it would have caused us to go 2 days instead of just one. I mean, obviously the first needs to be off because the whole world is closed on the first, except for the mall, I think. The other thing I want to ask you, did you consider at all not having any snow days?
Well, we talked about it. We certainly did. We really feel like that isn't prudent, because when you go and defend later and ask for waivers, if we do use more days and you're asking for waivers, the first thing they're going to do from the state is say to us, what have you done to mitigate the damages, kind of. And so we feel strongly that we have to have some days built in there. We know that we're probably going to have a few days. In the last year, I have all of that information from all of the counties if you wanted that, but basically 4 to 5 or more the average of what we use, but we just couldn't make it work with doing more than 3.
I was just wondering because, you know, the governor implied when he made his announcement that it didn't matter if there were more snow days than people had because they could just be waived. So I didn't know if it was a possibility to just not put any snow days in and then go to the state board and say, well, we don't have to go after the 15th, so please waive them.
We were actually, our administration was actually very proactive in this and actually looked at asking the Monday, Easter Monday, if we could go ahead and request a waiver. We officially did that, and we were turned down because until you use the days, they won't give you a waiver. What will have to happen is the waiver could be that they waive the last day, the 15th. That could be what the waiver is, or the waiver is that they're going to have to waive days. We're looking to, just so that everyone is clear on that, the fourth snow day would be Easter Monday. We would request that if we have large amounts of snow prior to our spring break. We would request that we go that day to make up for the fourth day. And then we're kind of where we are average what we use anyway. And after that, we would have to request waivers and see what they do.
But basically, if there's any more than 4 snow days, we won't be going to school for 180 days, and that will affect instruction.
Exactly.
Well, you have 2 laws that are in conflict with each other. You have the 180 days, and you have the June 15th hard end.
No, the governor said we won't be going after the 15th.
So that could be exactly what happens. This is going to really new territory, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I'm going with that.
We'll go with you.
I have some questions also that had come in through email for clarification on some of the half days and days off. The first thing, I do want to go back and revisit the fall sports beginning on the 12th. We've had some folks asking, you know, if we started on the 9th last year and we started 2 weeks before Labor Day, why aren't fall sports starting on the 23rd? If we have the flexibility to shift the start date of sports, as long as we don't start before the 9th, why not take those 10 days? And
I'll let Dr. Arlotto, because he's really knows more about that.
It will. One of the concerns will be that it will put our student athletes at a disadvantage. We certainly could start later, right? So the state tells us you can't start before X day, whatever it is on a given calendar year. But I think it will put our students at a disadvantage because once they start practice, as I said earlier to Mr. Gillen, they have to have a certain number of days for heat acclimatization, certain number of days of practices before they can go into their full scrimmages and getting into preseason scrimmages and then starting their competitive schedule, because the competitive schedules are still going to end by the first week of December. So it just shortens the amount of time that our coaches will have with the student athletes to get them ready for the season.
And do we know if MPSSAA is looking at their start date in lieu of the governor's executive order?
Yes, as you know, I'm a member of PSAM, so the Superintendent's Association with the State of Maryland, and PSAM officially asked MPSSAA to review the start time for this coming school year, given the fact that the governor's executive order and starting post-Labor Day. And this is, as I'm sharing with you, this is the information that they officially shared back with PSAM.
But they're still considering it, or they're
not.
going to leave it?
They have considered it, and their concern is giving the student athletes enough time in the heat of August to get ready for the fall seasons, and so they are not looking to shift later than where they are now.
Okay, so parents can not be there assuming we might push it later and planning vacations the week of the 14th. They should go with the 12th.
Correct.
Okay. The second question I had was from families, October 20th, the MSEA Professional Development Day. Is that a negotiated agreement day? Or,
yes, it is.
So that's not a flexible day. These are all from people who would like to get spring break back.
I certainly understand that. We would like that too.
December, like our 3 parent-teacher conferences, also I've had parents saying that they're not really being utilized. I know we really have only had one so far this year. I understand from even my colleagues that they went to their children's school and teachers were busy all day. I guess it depends on the school and the teachers.
And it is a new practice, the way we are doing and giving them the opportunity 3 different times within the year. So your first couple of years of that, you're acclimating to that new schedule. So there's going to be some transitions as parents get used to the ability to do that.
Yeah, and that's what I've said. We don't know what the date is going to show for the next 2 days. 2-hour early dismissals, January 29th and 30th, end of second marking period. I think you've already answered that. We're building those in at the end of the quarterly assessments to allow teachers to grade. Is that a negotiated item as well? And then schools closing for students on the 31st. I assume that's the semester break switch, also negotiated.
Yes.
But you have a note.
It's a work day. That's a full work day.
And that says that it could be made a school day for students.
It could be made a school day, but they would still get a full day. If we had to adjust for snow,
then that would be off the 1st of February.
They would still get their full day.
Okay. Okay. Second page. God, those are all the same things. Professional development. April 17th, we have professional development 2-hour early dismissal after 2 other days the week before as half days. Some parents are concerned about having to adjust their work schedule for 3 days in April, kind of back to back. Like, why did we choose the 17th as opposed to a different date?
We've moved these around several times with input from teachers and students. The 17th, we are bound by not really being able to do professional development in May because of AP testing the first 2 weeks, and your seniors are leaving. There's lots of things going on in May. So that's why it is a rough time to do it, but that was when we thought it was best. I mean, you could certainly change that if you thought that was a better day.
Right, we don't have any half days in March. I know we have some days off, though.
But we have assessments. We have the Maryland Integrated Science Assessment is going on then. We have the beginning of spring break. Schools closed for parent conferences. That's why we didn't touch March.
Okay.
Plus, we still have snow days in March a lot, too. But we can certainly, we're open to that if you all wanted to do that.
And then my last question is under religious observances. Have we considered adding October 19th Diwali to the list? I know some of our counterparts in other counties are celebrating that day or closing for that day. We're not advocating to close.
We have not had any requests to do that from any parents or community members. We could certainly do it if you'd like us to add it under the observances, but we have not had that request at all, not even one.
Okay. Right, as an observance, not a closure.
Yeah, but we can certainly do that.
Okay. Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you again. Just to piggyback on the religious observances section, I know that the school system generally has not closed on Rosh Hashanah, but it has closed on Yom Kippur. And
we used to. This is the first year.
this is the first year? Okay. But Yom Kippur, this particular calendar, next year falls on a weekend.
Correct.
And I know that changes from year to year. So going beyond this particular calendar and, you know, putting on our forward
Right.
lens.
It's going to, I'll let Bob, we've discussed this at length, but I'll let him handle this.
So I guess the big question is whether, I know Easter Monday, for instance, is a state mandated day for closure, but is Yom Kippur one of those days?
No.
No.
Okay, so we would have flexibility.
And we
in
have the
future.
data for Rosh Hashanah to show you the impact that it had this year.
Right.
Okay.
If you would like that.
But so you're correct, it falls on a weekend in 17-18, but a weekday in 18-19. So that's a discussion the board would have to have, and the calendar committee would have to have. In fact, in 18-19, not only would you have that day to consider, but you'd have another election day.
Thank you.
So it's going to be that's going to be really a challenge year as well, if nothing changes.
I don't have any other questions from the board. I have a card from Janet Norman.
We have to stay in case, because I'm
Thank you, Janet Norman, Annapolis High, Annapolis Middle parent. I wrote the board last night an email to all the board members asking if you would please consider delaying a vote on this calendar for 2 weeks, not having a final vote on the calendar, in order to allow parent input to really look at this calendar and give you their impressions, and work with you to develop the best schedule with all the constraints that you're put under. I'm extremely concerned that the press release went out October 28th. That was Friday. About this is the final calendar we're proposing, and you're voting on it on essentially two and a half business days later. That doesn't give parents time to examine what you're putting forward for their 81,000 students. And you all know how the school year dictates every element of our lives. Every minute we have to be here or plan vacations with our families is dictated by the school calendar. So I had heard there were some changes, and I went to print out the school calendar. On Thursday, October 27th, last Thursday, I printed out the calendar from your website, not realizing it was the old tentative calendar. It was not a new calendar that you were voting on. Last Thursday, you had the old calendar up on your website as the 17-18 calendar. So you can see why people are frustrated and mad and don't correspond with you kindly, because they feel like they are left out of the decision making. I would also propose that you take the 4 professional development days that are early dismissal and flip them to be late arrival. Why not take that opportunity to give high school students the sleep that they need in a readily doable manner? That's not hard to achieve. There's many things. Some people don't know that in high school, if you don't show up on the first day of high school sports tryouts, you don't make the team. I know a number of players at Annapolis High, families were away. You don't get another chance. You don't make that team. And you're requiring us to be there weeks in advance of school starting with nothing else for our kids to do, but the family has to be back for that incredibly early high school start season. So please work on that as much as you can, and let people know that. Probably your 30,000 elementary school students and parents don't know that you're not having an early dismissal on Halloween next year. That's always been in the calendar. and parents have counted on it, but they don't know that.
That has not always been in the calendar.
In many years, it has been in the calendar.
Two.
In many years, it has. Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comments? All right, all those in favor of this proposed calendar? Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0-0.
Thank you.
Item 4.04 is the 2017 legislative program. This is an information to action item as well. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? I now have an action item and a presentation.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Jessica Kutchis.
I guess we need George's recommendation first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I wasn't asked yet. Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the revised 2017 legislative program.
Okay, now we have a presentation.
I apologize. Good morning. For the record, again, I'm Jessica Kutchis, representing the Legislative and Policy Office. It's my pleasure to bring to you the recommended 2017 legislative program. While it's only November, our General Assembly convenes very soon in January. The session this year is January 11th through April 10th. The document in front of you provides a comprehensive overview of the board's position on topics that impact public schools and education in Maryland and will likely be topics of conversation amongst the General Assembly this year. This program serves many purposes. The first is that before session begins, the program is sent out to all of our elected officials to provide them with background, positions, and beliefs for our school system so that they are aware of the board stances when drafting, reviewing, and amending bills. During the session, we use this program to advocate on your behalf when bills are filed. This document allows us to respond quickly to bills as they change rapidly, and knowing your positions ahead of time allow us to be responsive to the needs of the General Assembly in this way. And finally, throughout the year, this program is utilized by staff so that they know board positions on topics that often come up during the year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have related to this document at this time.
I just had one. I know we talk about our funding wanting to be equitable in our facilities, et cetera, in here, but I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to add a separate position for equity in general for our students. I know that some of our colleagues in Montgomery County have put forward some wording such as having an atmosphere of respect and non-discrimination for students in general. Would it make sense to have that as a separate position instead of, I know it's tucked in, the word equitable is tucked in various positions, but have it as a separate position?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It aligns with our strategic plan as well as our non-discrimination policies and language that is woven throughout our policies. So I think if the board had a recommendation on specific language, that would make a lot of sense.
Ms. Williams?
Okay. So I move that the board add to the legislative program the following language as the first bullet in the academic achievement section under AACPS supports. An equitable learning environment that promotes an atmosphere of respect and non-discrimination for all students and staff members, regardless of actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, marital status, sexual orientation, genetic information, gender identity, or disability.
Second.
Okay, all those, well, we need to discuss. Mr. Gilliland, do you want to comment on that or something different? Okay. Does anybody want to comment on the motion? Mrs. Burge?
I definitely support the amendment. I think that it's a great idea for us to put out there that this is what we believe as a board, and that way no one can question what our thoughts are.
And to clarify, this would go under the existing academic achievement position as the first bullet?
That's correct. That's how I heard the motion.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this motion? All right. So we vote on the motion to add it. All those in favor? Okay, so we're adding that bullet to academic achievement. Now, Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. And I, when I ran in the back and came back out, I lost my page. But there was a specific bullet that noted, and I can't find it now, but something to the effect of funding vis-a-vis community colleges. And I'm sorry, I don't know what page it was on.
I know the comment that you're referencing.
It was page 6. Thank you, page 6. And certainly when I'm in this building, I take that to heart. But I want to just ask, did something happen last year that that may have prompted us to add specific language indicating that a community college versus K through 12 funding issue? I just wanted to understand the rationale behind that. Certainly understanding why, but why this year versus why not last year or previous years?
Right. So it may be helpful to explain the process, but to specifically answer your question, there wasn't a specific incident that prompted that language this year, but this document is shared with staff members that have expertise in each of the fields, and so our budget and office basically thought that that would be prudent to make that addition. And I think it's essentially, as the board knows, there are limited resources as far as funds are concerned at the state level, and so we just want to ensure that while we work collaboratively with community colleges, and we are sharing different responsibilities with them as a result of the 2013 legislation regarding college and career readiness, we don't want any of the responsibilities that they take on to then take funding away from us because we still have the needs that exist. But there wasn't a specific incident. We just thought in reviewing every year, we sort of make this better based on our experiences. And as the board's aware, there's committees looking currently at how public schools are funded in the state of Maryland, and we want to ensure that our piece of the pie doesn't shrink.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the legislative program overall? All those in favor of the revised 2017 legislative program as amended? All right, motion passes 7-0-0. We now have two review items. 5.01, the Carroll S. Parham Administration Building Telecommunication Transmission Facility. So this is a proposal to have a cell tower put on the property here.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Are there any board questions or comments? I just had one question. I know when it's on a school property, some of the fees go to the school. Where would the fees for this particular tower go?
Again, they come into the school district, so we'd be the school. Part of it stays at the school, part of it stays within the cluster. So the cluster element would be distributed according to the revised procedures that we have adopted here in the school district.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last review item is 5.02, award of contracts. Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? Okay. Then I have a couple of announcements before we adjourn back to closed session. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, November 16th at 7 p.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is Wednesday, November 30th at 1 p.m. And the next Board Budget Committee meeting is Wednesday, November 16th at 4:30 p.m. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, I motion to move to closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
All those in favor? All right, that concludes the general portion of the meeting.